당도 나 거기 동아 타다를 줘야지. 아주 탈바세지 두고 그래지. 탈바마 도바이나 바기디나 코발에 깨반 동아이 하시지. 지상 탈바 두고 그래. 탈바 토발라 탈바 dunyi기 삼바데 끼고 그래서. 지사다 탈바 dunyi기 삼바 깨와라 안에 가르고 보세네. 코발에 야균 거기 쳐라 야균 통하지. 안에 코발에 탈두게 삼바 깨와이나 되는 탈바 토부도 셈비 듬바디 끼고 그래. 대인장 아주 코발에 균 통고 그래서. 나 코발에 균 삼나타도 그네 땅으로습니다. 냐와 이다 dunro disulya 깨와는 안에 지켜와이나 동아 여바디 파삼다 되겠으니 기부 중요 람 림 텍스트 시에시 안디마세다 냐와 이다 dunro라 타지 하다 밀리야 깨바이네야 동아 묘마를 베스네 동아 요레스 진짜 밀리 깨바이네 동아 다지 기회 동아 가회 동아 나회 동아 치회 동아 세하다 어디네게 동아 빠도메 봐 요레야세야디 다 그생아도 니고르 시에시 안에 동아 디시 다데네 동아에서 델레 탈두게 삼바 델레 타고도 델레 탈베 타바 토고도 샘비게 삼바데 장고레 세야디 그생 당아도 디고르 나 밀리아 동아 용다지 고르디 징아도 그생 디시 사시
Good evening. So we've been looking for a couple of months now at the situation within samsara and how to come to understand our actual experiences here. And we're looking at it in the context of what the suffering, the nature of cyclic existence, and we've come to see how it is pervaded by suffering. And this is an important topic to reflect on. Because in order to attain a state that is completely freed of suffering, which is our innermost desire, in order to achieve such a state, we have to strive for it. And in order to strive to achieve it, strive in the sense of with all our determination, we have to understand our current situation. In order to, and through recognizing our current situation, we will then strive to be freed of it. So this comes about through reflecting with clarity on the situation that is samsara. And this starts with, as we looked at in February, in the context of the practitioner of initial capacity, at the trainings in accordance with the practitioner of initial capacity. One looks at the suffering experiences that that beings are experiencing now in the lower realms. And then if one though were to think, well, in the rebirths as a human or God, that's okay, suffering's not so bad. This is a mistake, and this is what we've been looking at now for the last couple of months, looking in detail at the suffering experiences in the human realm. We've looked at the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, the suffering of meeting the unwanted, the suffering of being separated from the wanted, and the suffering of not getting what one wants despite striving for it, and lastly, the suffering of having the 5 contaminated aggregates. And in this way, through these reflections, we come to see how cyclic existence is pervaded by suffering. Whatever one experiences in samsara, wherever one is born within samsara, as long as one is a samsaric being, one suffers. Thinking like this, then, leads to determination to be freed from the sufferings of cyclic existence, because we have seen with vivid clarity the faults of samsara. And this determination isn't to be free only from the coarse, the very obvious sufferings, but the subtle sufferings, the pervasive sufferings. And today we continue on page 30 with the sufferings of those that are born as a god.
That's it. Hamayin is a Lu Jedala Soya Dunga Shindu and Zubale Matis.
In the first line, in the realm of the demigods, beings suffer from constant fighting, killing, and wounding each other.
Deus Dragaji. Now, Hakonos knowledge in the Deus Gyor, which is a deeper than called Lama Insi Minti, and Hayam Mayin by me and Mayin Basachi to Char. What I didn't Lama Insi Mintagore, just I knew that Lama Insi the big Lanalia, like Kunru Jagore in there. Shung Kashina, what Lama said, Dundro Chris, Dundro Lamaris, Dundroris and the Nesungore. Nagaji Garine Mine, Lama said Lia, Anne, Java Lembaina, and Dunga Katakari Yungore said Igor Masher.
Demigods are included within the God realm. So their situation is better than that of humans, but not that as good as of the gods in the desire realm. So they're somewhere in between. And so the demigods are only found within the desire realm. And the gods here in the desire realm are generally divided into two, that are demigods and gods. However, some texts actually say that there are only one type of God or class of God within the desire realm, and those that are called demigods are actually to be found within the animal realm. So some texts classify it in this way. But however one classifies these beings, here we look at their experiences, their suffering experiences.
Anjidang Dungai Dunga said, and Julia Dunga said, Chabatu Dunga said, Mazu Milio Vanani Chikvari Corona to Yungore. Zadane, Delia Karigungu said, the Beneconzugi, that Delia, and Hama said, the Be Chike Hadan Yum to Ma Japche. Ma Jabdu, did Gangbacha and Lakbacha, and the Chike Supol Masuada, didn't child do that, Nasa Shu the Gangamoligo, Chiza, Hamayala, Lu Jejeki, Dunga Shindu. Zubale Madesi, the Chizan Hama indicalia, Hadan, the Maja, Diniki, Tukuja Maja, the Nigambaja, Lavaja, Subol Master, Suada, the Niki Jene, the Niki, and Dunga, and this so bottom of Yungo Chagri essays, this Udua.
Demigods, just like humans, suffer from the threefold division of suffering: the suffering of manifest physical and mental pain, the suffering of transitory happiness, and the all-pervasive suffering. But there are particular sufferings that exemplify this, the experiences of demigods, is their near constant battle, warfare with the gods. They nearly constantly engage in warfare with gods, and from this they suffer immeasurably, as we see in our text, fighting, killing, and wounding each other.
She the Goche Shavana Shigres, Lama in the Yokoche and Mother, that Mad Tubuja, Gangba Lava, Kazina, Shivanazin, me Nazi Gangba Lava chair that didn't see Kiaba Javane, didn't she a Yungurwa? Sangondu, Gangba Cheba, that Lava Cheba to Cheba in there, where she go Mades. She's not that as a part of Mabakidina, Junibu, Madava, the Yungo Chagua. Now Goche and Mado, she Mades, she didn't get Sumudua. Go Genesis, go Majanet in the Lakbata, Gamba Jebana, Tua Jebana, Karama Suvina, the negotiation Madesur.
Whilst there certainly is warfare in our human realm, there are some noticeable differences between the warfare in the human realms and the God realms. One being the near constant warfare between the demigods and the gods, but also a particular difference is that gods do not easily die, or the demigods do not easily die. They heal from their wounds. And therefore, they continue to suffer. They stay in this rebirth, continuing to fight, to be gravely injured, heal, fight again, gravely injured, and heal. And this process just continues with experiences of immeasurable suffering. In fact, the only way they can die in warfare is if they are decapitated. But if their other limbs are severed or they're gravely wounded, they heal from this. So this is another way that the experiences of the demigods differs from humans. And in this way too, their suffering of constant battle is prolonged in this realm.
지사다 데니기 동아 아니 코로나 나로 이네 안지게 되차네 요래 컨트롤 요래 아니 지 컨트롤 기도 안지게 코로나 아니 컨트롤 기도 디기 강아 샹랴 강아 되야 랑라 강아 되차 기도 랑라 강아 샹랴 강아 되야 안 ngaje 기도 랑라 강 샹랴 강아 지사 라신니가 강아다 지기 지기려 투제다야다 dine yorwa da khons na la di lan dine yong gorwa che dine za da nga zu mil yoba na shin an dunga di khons la ji ba cha de gorwa dine ge dunga ba do me ba yoba cha de che za da la dine ge la ma yin se de ge ba yin na le da nyom mo wong ge da la ma yin se de ge ba yin na da dunga ra shin re sha che za ka de sam ta na da dunga ra shi khons phung bo de yin na da cha wa du ji dunga yi phung bo cha de che za dunga yi ra shi che za dunga yi 제 삼제다 되네 자다 하만이라 깨바네 동아 되네 또 제사다 내가 녀모 뭔가 하만이끼리 끼나 동아도 제사 텔레다 타고도 텔레 타네 탈비 탈바시 맞으면 되게 민도 삼제 난 저게 누스 삼당 고래 지금 왔다 가제래 하만이라 균여 바다 강아여 바 삼단에 땅에도 그렇지 오르선 단 하만이끼리 약고래서 메델이야 착신데 빵빵지 텔레 타고도 삼배 삼배게 된다라 강아 요바데 시고로와 셰 김세스가마 다 디네 셰반자 다 디네 다 딜레 타나 가고서 타바사드 마텀네 탑 민도다 냐와케나 둥아도 레다 녀모 냐와케나 강아도 이달라케나 강아도 눈돌라케나 강아도 밀케베나 강아 짱야르샤 다 하마일라케나 강아 짱야르샤 디네 인사다 코르위 레다 녀모 게와세와 자와기네 레 메바 소고도 제산디 탈바 토구도 선배게다 탈바스 마도네 지금 민도 선배 탈바 돈이게 삼로 기에다 기에게 돈달로 송고로다.
Just like our own experiences in the human realms, the desire realm gods suffer from their afflictions. They experience the manifest suffering of physical and mental pain through the arisal of attachment and anger and the other afflictions, and thereby, through the arisal of afflictions, they create problems for each other. And the presence of afflictions cause them to suffer too. So they don't live in harmony with each other. The arisal of the afflictions, just like with us, cause them to suffer and ensure when they act on the impulse of the afflictions, cause others to suffer. So just like with us. And moreover, being born due to in an uncontrolled manner due to the power of contaminated karma accumulated due to the afflictions, just like us, their afflictions are in the very nature of suffering. Their aggregates are in the very nature of the afflictions. The aggregates can be called appropriated aggregates, contaminated aggregates, suffering aggregates. And thereby their experience is in the very nature of suffering. The purpose of reflecting on these, on an unseen realm such as that of the demigods, is to further deepen our understanding that there is nothing worthy of longing for within samsara. There's no worthy outcome. There's no outcome worthy of us longing for it as long as it remains within the realms of samsara. And this needs to be cultivated deeply within us to give rise to a genuine and lasting disenchantment with samsara. A disenchantment where we come to see truly there is nothing worthy of striving for as long as it remains bound within samsara. So this is why we continue to reflect on the sufferings, including in the realms that are unseen to us.
Onda kasi nganzo milia kanga yoba shiaro ta kanga de ni yorse mili shi de jida mi ki jidang ge dunga de shi go ro ne mi kha shi one jike jam ni je cha shu sem nyam ne che da ni ting ge si shi ne drup ting ge zu kom nyam ne che de sul ya ni jidang dunga de chawa de ju dunga yor de ine ta nga ju ge jidang dunga ba to me ba de yo ha ge de ka dunga nyu yor wa on di na shi mi lama yin na le jike Nijung Gom Chachu Sem Nyamne Chada, Diniki Lam Nyamne Chene, Dingy Zendrupshine Nyamne Che, Dine Yorovada in it. The Consula, the Yachiki Dunga, the Ganga, 중화로 니나 캬바 두지 동화도 요라데 인다 동화 중화 용거로 와다 지바로 와다 지당하다 당가 라면에 동화 되는데 요라세데 고 지당하는 기시고로 와 라면에 나래 아주 미나래 매미하고 안에 지게 잠니제 냠내제 띵에제 신의 쭉 냠내제 여바나진다 라면에 나래 근데 용거를 냠냄 바 최제가 뭐 약보 용거로 와
It should be mentioned that we're talking about the general sufferings of the beings in the demigod realm. This isn't pervasive that all of them experience everything that is presented in the text, because there are those who have been born in this realm who have good imprints from Dharma practice. Just like, for example, in the human realm, we looked at the eightfold division of suffering and the threefold division of suffering. And whilst all human beings, all ordinary human beings suffer from in these ways, there is degrees to the magnitude of the varying sufferings. For example, those who are striving to cultivate the minds of the Dharma and having some success, perhaps they've cultivated calm abiding, generated love, compassion, even bodhicitta, they're still a human being. So they suffer from pervasive suffering, all-pervasive suffering. So they do still suffer. The aggregates are still appropriated aggregates, suffering aggregates, but their degree of suffering is far less than the average human being or the common experience of human beings. So, similarly, in the demigod realm, there is a gradient of suffering. Not every being is the same. Some have imprints of practicing the Dharma, some are Dharma practitioners. But what's presented in the text is the general experience.
지금 동화 유유 동화 잡아두지 동화 여바데 먼저 지바래 차상로 여바 지바래 나디나시다 데벨할이야 오늘 지당 먼저 데벨하디길이야 아주 미제나 공주의 최신화다 아주 롱주되게 야가다 니네시 지당 유대 발에 이내다 먼저 동화 여러 유유 동화 여러 잡아두지 동화 유대 발에 디네자다 디가라야 데 가려운 것은 데벨하나물이야 안 동화 안에 지게 인치위 동화세하다 나 빠공의 동화세하다 진지게 내내 대비 동화세하다 빠공의 동화세 나리나 제일에 시작하고 빠공의 동화세 용거래 내내 대비 동화세다 되네게 동화 직망 용거래 제래 대비하대요.
The desire realm gods are divided into two. Those are the demigods and those of the gods. There are further gods within samsara, those gods that are not of the desire realm, but are of the form realm and the formless realm. The desire realm gods, they suffer from the same threefold division of suffering as humans. The suffering of physical and mental manifest pain, the suffering of transient pleasure, and the suffering of all-pervasive conditioning. So they do experience these sufferings too, but compared to humans, they've got particular characteristics which are far greater than what we have. For example, their lifespan, as well as the comfort and abundance of their material resources. Whilst the gods in the desire realm have a far longer life than humans and a far greater abundance and quality of material resources, they suffer in ways that we do not. And this is then referred to in our text. Above that, in the realm of the desire gods, when the 5 signs of oncoming death manifests, the beings suffer more than do the hell denizens. As their splendor fades and they are shunned by the other gods, they know boundless mental anguish.
아니 넘균네 코로나서 아니 지게 코로나서 사야 통해 빼네 코로나서 그 튕기에 되사래 되니까 사제되게 장마당 아니 세정보다 아니 튕게 야고에 되게 자격으로 와 이내다 안 가르치는 여러서네 동화 다 되네 가르동화 용고로서네 다 시로치디 니 치유 지대가 세지 치유 다선로지 나 용고를 해라래 치유 다선아 지난 치유 다선아 가르 용고로서는 나보들이야 하나 소속에 소보디게 봐 규진 수닝바차로 괜고서지 다든가 당볼할야 그런 소보디게 배 야고 장마 년조에베네 다고 요거 희리에서 비게 치유에 다선 레어도 갑라 내 시에게 다들 레도 안에 갈리고서는 소보디 봐 가서 대신 인지 보여봐 인지 매봐 동행으로 차고 도신 유로로 와다 되네게 치유에다 안에 소보디게 인지와디게 동행바 교화지 교 지금 그래지래 나들 와다 잠도 유로로 와다 경고 인과 동행 바자도 유로로 와 되네 유도 안에 가르쳐고서는 안다 배 동화 쉬운 거래지 다 가서는 당 앞에 동에다 동은 차고도 삼제 샘절이야 쇼제 샘절 샘을 강아 쉬운 거래지 지사 예외 동안에 채와나 예외 동안에 채와나 쉬운 거래지
Gods have these, desiring gods have these long lives where they have tremendous comfort. They want for nothing. Their conditions are comfortable. They have abundance of food and very comfortable living experiences or living conditions. But then when their time of death approaches, then there are signs of their impending death. And these signs cause tremendous anguish. So the first of the signs is that their body changes hue. It's the color of their body becomes unattractive. And this is the first time they would have ever experienced something like this in their life, experienced it in terms of themselves, but they know what it means. They know their death is approaching. And this causes them incredible mental anguish and anxiety that we as humans can't even comprehend. And this is what our text refers to. When the 5 signs of oncoming death manifests, the beings suffer more than do the hell denizens.
가르치는 거부면 자기가 와서는 대대디게 인과로 속과로 자르고 인지로와 되네 자다 될이야 즉 미디어밖에 제 될이야 되니 말해 봐 자 될이야 즉 강아시고 되게 동안 빠도매 봐 연구를 해지래.
The first sign of impending death was that their bodies turn into an unattractive color. The second is that their home of great luxury that they've lived in for so long now no longer satisfies them because it becomes uncomfortable. Their home becomes somewhere unpleasant for them to live. And this too then is something they've never experienced themselves, and they know what this means. They know that this is a sign of impending death.
다디와 지 동디와다 나고 지 쪽바 차지 배 동에는 차성은 샘제 휴제디 치료를 받되 미질 되 마법에 나로 주디해야 되는 게 연구로와 아니 넘준다 직배 장마 휴제 튕긴 돼서 야보 장마시 되는 게 님이 다 돼서 쪽바 낸 쪽바 좀 카드가 강바지 나라 되고 같은 같이 강아지 연구로 와다 가서 미래 연구로 와 아니 나실이다 건설이.
Perhaps how we can relate to this, because this of course is all unseen to us, is if we think of those who are very attractive. When they age and they lose their youthful good looks and any benefits that came from this, then this causes great mental anguish when they no longer look the way that they used to. And also in terms, so that would be the first of relating to the first of the 5, and then the second, if we have a beautiful home, somewhere quite luxurious, and then something happens and it becomes filthy and unlivable, this too would cause us great anguish. And that's without even these being signs of impending death. So we can thereby impute how bad this, how intense the suffering is for gods. And thirdly, the third sign of impending death is that the flower garlands they usually wear and decorate themselves, these for the first time start to wilt. And so this then too impacts on their perceived beauty. And what makes the suffering so profound is that they know that this is a further sign of their impending death. And fourthly, for the first time, their clothing starts to smell. God's living with this abundance of comfort, now experiencing an unpleasant odor for the very first time. And not only are they experiencing this unpleasant odor, being now the fourth of the 5 signs of impending death, their friends want nothing to do with them. They understand these signs too. And they are also repulsed by what they are seeing, and they abandon their lifelong companion.
Dene subu dolon timba kagido nga da do gyude pe dongan chagido jesa nga da subu le nguna tyenje denegi timba ka den pe du denegi sam ta da shanda la me de sosol dine tong de dene kanga shu jesa ma ki wa sha da ni shanda ge ne odon ji ane ne ha de ge nomyin ko za ma ko win za an ji ma ka da zo ba le de nyam de ma zho ba ko ro ba de nomyin chen de ge ne 다 가지 다른 부처네 대사나 지르왕도 된 내연 포여도 다른 부처 요구라 님도 줘야 말아 어디나 신전에 님도 용마 줘봐지 그 저와 맞제바 차도 된 소소 지부 차리 걸어 소소 지부로 차 되네 되네게 셈체지네 당하시고 리교래 저래데 지다 치디행아 포페가 강아 동아 빠도 매바디 녀위 동아 나니 나시 용거래 저래
And the fifth sign of impending death is that not only does their clothing start to smell, but their body sweats and smells too. And again, they haven't any experience of unpleasant odor, and now they themselves are sweating and smelling. And this, again, is a clear sign of their impending death. So here, with their death approaching, having certainty of their approaching death, they are having to suffer this all alone. They've been deserted by their lifelong friends. Their home is no longer a place of comfort and joy. Their ornaments that they beautified their body, these have wilted and died. Their clothing that was so beautiful and soft to touch, this now also smells, as does their body and their body's color. The body has lost its luster that it had throughout their life. So here, everything that they value, their body, their material comforts, all are degenerating. And they're having to experience the loss of all that they value, as well as their impending death, alone. We can liken this a bit to those who are seriously ill with COVID. And they are having to lie perhaps in a hospital bed, worrying, anxious, and alone, surrounded by caring medical professionals, but who are dressed in these protective clothing that keeps them emotionally distant from the patient. And they're suffering there alone. So this is the closest that we can come to understand the sufferings that the gods go through. But this is something that they have no direct experience of. And hence, it's likened to, hence it's said to be even greater than the suffering experienced by beings in the hell realms.
다 개와 치마디 가와기 여바디 코노스기 원시요나 원시기 통무레지레 다 개와 치마다 체들이야 데니기 개와 치마 가소다 데니지리 기기 여바지 통바이네다 다 데니기 강아 나디리 마 개와 치마 벤다도 코노스 하세데 베 장마나 되서 장마다 데니기 인자다 미니 징아소 베능아 저 녀와다 디스 파샤 당아소 벤 셈제 베 쪽과나는 추쪽과다 데니 dimba카나 되지 데니시를 기기요바 있나 그런 것이 통반은 아제 삼장한 게만 that many 로 해서 데니 쪽과 강아 태고라서 디제 셈제 효중 거래제 제가 그런 소리야.
Here experiencing the loss of their magnificent bodies, the loss of their magnificent home, and not just the loss, but the degeneration, the fading, the rotting of it before their eyes. Then not only do they experience this, but through their clairvoyance, they see that when their impending death comes, they see with their clairvoyance where they'll be born in their next life. And if that is in the lower realms, they are aware, they can see the conditions they will be born into. And that is nothing that has been ever experienced at all in their lives. And they suddenly see that what's fading around them now, what's rotting around them now in terms of their home and their possessions and their body is nothing compared to what they're about to face. And hence their suffering is said to be even worse than those in the hell realms.
코로나도 튕김배 마서 야고 쉬우지 아니 용거를 하 코로나도 날에 튕김 야도 마모가 밀에 아니 지금 미카시 변조 첨부배 튕김 야고 여바 미카시를 겨우 쉬어야도 여바 나신 다 지당 하나도 미진에 코로나도 하디기디 야보리디 이내 다 코로나도 나로에 하선남 첨부디기 통연도 하선남 첨부디기 튕김 야고배 연대 쉬우지 통연도 안에 다 하선남 녀만 선남 춘주는 메달라 뜻 교하루시디 코로나 배 셈슈슈 자월 바공하람나 배 셈슌고는 하교보레샤다 콘소데 배 대야고레샤 마민도 섬제되니게 배 셈슈슈 자 자고를 자네 코로나 배 교슈 미래 여러바다 당아 교슈레 당아지 직매 콘솔 야고도 콘솔 마라도 콘솔 강보도 콘솔 메도도 말레메 셈배 하교슈레 셈배 셈슌제 강아 데네 강아 연구로 진짜 하콘솔에 바공을 동화서 셈슌제 하변 수남 첨부 연된 첨부 되게 통계 야고 통여도 당할 민도 콘솔 아니면 콘솔 빼고도 섬지 소소한 학교 슈레샤 섬네 셈슌비게 슌네 강아 슈는 거래지 바공 와서 디세월
Just like in the God realms are in some ways have some similar characteristics to our human realms. Some gods with a huge store of virtue behind them have incredible luxury. Others, whilst gods, and have incredible luxury compared to us, have nothing compared to others. So this is similar to our human realm, where some live in tremendous opulence, others live in great squalor. And the result of this is those gods who live ordinary celestial existence, they look at those with great magnificence and they feel dispirited. They have a low sense of self-worth. They look at what others have and they do not and cannot have. And this leaves them feeling weak-minded, downcast, their spirits low. And this is similar to what is experienced in our human realm as well. But this adds to the suffering that is experienced there, despite, nevertheless, the good conditions they have relative to us. But to those that they compare themselves to, they have nothing. And this eats them inside. There's also a difference in terms of power that gods have. Some have more, some have less. And those that have more, they utilize this power without care for the impact on others. For example, evicting those those with less power from their home, taking their homes, adding it to theirs, and chasing the other gods away. So they also have problems such as these. What we see here is that some of the sufferings of the God realm, experienced in the God realms, are very similar to what we have here. So we heard about warfare, we heard about abuse of power, we heard about longing for what one cannot have. And this is very similar to our experiences in the human realm. We may be fortunate to not experience warfare, but we certainly experience conflict. And we also have experiences of those with power, taking advantage of, abusing, pushing around those without power. We also have experience of the suffering that comes from longing for what we can't have. So these sufferings we can relate to, and these are also experienced even by gods.
And dini za dang du sam da ban da le da nyu mo wang ge la le ke ba yin da dini du nga ba to me ba nyong we du as che sa da la le ke ne ning bo he min du as che sa da de le ya yi men je ya kai min du che sa da ko yu le da nyu mo we la le ke na du nga du che sa da du nga le ta ya min du che sa dini za da de su le ya yi men je ya min du se den za da de le ta che ne ya ta ba se de ma de ta min ta ba to gu du sen be ge da sam le ke ho jang go re se wo da.
The point of this reflection is if we look at the desire realm and we think, who has it best? It's very easy to long for, oh, well, if only I had a better condition like some others do. And certainly here one would think of gods, because when we think of the experiences of gods, we think, oh, everything's so fantastic, so much better than I have. But this is just because we're not thinking about it clearly. If we think about it clearly in the way that it's being presented here, we see that behind the facade of outer magnificence, that situation too is pervaded by suffering. And a situation pervaded by suffering is not worthy of striving for, it's nothing worthy of longing for. This we need to recognize, because we need to break this mistaken thought that there is pleasure to be found in samsara. There's pleasure worthy of longing for, striving for in samsara. And through this resulting disenchantment with samsara, we will be ready to generate a sincere wish for liberation from cyclic existence.
아미 데벨 하디길에 양직 잠니제 장쇼 셈 고미하다 미정 고미하다 람냠네 지겐 데니게 냐 요르와다 나 데니게 요바자 콘솔야 데니게 냠네 지겐 디게 요바이나 데니게 데벨 하디길에 치디에 포베네 둥아디제 용마로 그래서 무슨 콘주게 람냠네 지게 요바자 미다바레 지난 유어 두고레 셈비게 미다비 남샤다 유어 두비 남샤 데마 머드바 삼타에도 치디에 포바나 어디 미다바레 유어 두고레스 지난 레다 녀몽이 제부세 데네스마도 요마레 삼조 콘주기 디곰 삼타에도 콘줄레 치디에 포바나 디지기랑 셈리아 강아 둥아디 용구 유마로하다 아 저기 직바로 와서 밀리네 아 저기 다음에 남샤다 람냠렌 제간다 잠니제 냠렌 제간 지베나 소솔리아 둥아단까지 강아까지 채비네 안 되게 동랭이 삼당 데 냠렌 제도 소솔리아 둥아 마야와다 안 저기 로 보고 니보시 뭐 해야 돼 용구로 어디나신 직바로 혼소이네 람냠렌 제다 다음에 받아 미다베 남샤 냠렌 제 하고 온디게나 안 되게 치디에 보야다 되게 강아 채워도 안 되게 이제 미타바리 데 유에라신 자리 닝보여 말에 선비게 코발에 닝보메와 삼당 고면도 되게 대시 다시 한번 하신 깔리 쳐봐나신다 건조강나 용고 말와
Just to be clear, it's good to point out again that this presentation is the general presentation on the experiences of desire realm gods. This is the experience of almost all desire realm gods. Just like previously when we looked at the sufferings of the human realm, that is the experience of almost all humans. And there are exceptions, and those exceptions, though, are those who have generated paths of the Dharma in their continuum. Those who've meditated on definite emergence, love, compassion, generated even bodhicitta. Whilst they may be born in a God realm, they will not suffer to this extent. They will not suffer necessarily in these ways. They will have come to understand, for example, subtle impermanence. They may have a realization of emptiness. And therefore they know that samsara has no essence. They know that all that is around them and what arises in their mind is nothing worthy to be attached to desire here. They rather striving for a greater goal. And this is then similar in our human realm. We've looked at the sufferings of humans, we've reflected on that, but doesn't mean every human suffers in that way. Bodhisattvas, who are human beings, do not suffer in the same way as human beings who are not bodhisattvas. Those who have a realization of emptiness, those who have a realization of subtle impermanence, their suffering is greatly reduced while still being a human. So this is important to be clear on.
다니네 당한도 되비라 다다네 감고멍게 할래야 수단 수미게 사지길에 깨베나 다 데술레 동아 메바 기고리베스네 데수에 말에 지바레 다 레다 녀모 원게 감고메 할래 깨베나 동아 요래라레 다 가려 요래스나 다 감고메게 할래야 감고메게 아니 소소게 소게라 동아 운도 교와 매장 아니 삼다 숨바 만체라 아니 유 동아당 유 동아 요래제레 다 가려 요 말스네 아주 둥어에 세야지 요 말에서 감공미기 소소기 원리 내야 파발면 둥어에 세야 요 말에서 안에 가려 요르스네 유에 둥어 요래 잡아두지 둥어 요래 제래
Samsara, when divided, is usually divided into three realms: the desire realm, the form realm, and formless realm. So we've looked at the experiences of the demigods and gods within the desire realm. So then if one wonders, so what are the experiences of the gods in the form and the formless realms? Well, they too suffer. Why? They take uncontrolled rebirth, bound in samsara, due to their contaminated karma accumulated by their own afflicted minds. Therefore, their aggregates are in the nature of suffering. So here then, we can understand immediately that all gods in the form and formless realm will suffer from at least pervasive suffering. But let's then turn to the text. Still higher in samsara are the gods of the form and formless realms. And although they do not experience the suffering of immediate pain, those of the first three levels have the suffering of transient pleasure. So, what we have here as the suffering of immediate pain refers to the first of the three types of suffering, that of physical and mental pain. So the gods in the form and formless realm do not experience that, but they do experience the second two types of suffering, that of the suffering of transient pleasure and that of the suffering of all-pervasive condition.
sugil hadikele kariyorsene sugil ha bene samde sumba manche side sugil hadile niela mashiyore samde dambo nibo sumba shiba se shiyore jisaza samde dambo da niba da sumba da denege la sosuki budikele papa mahige sosuki budiselya 간질에 동안이 요래지래 가르요스네 규의 동안 용을에 안 잡아두지 동안 요래 마도 안에 동안이 동안 세요 말해지래.
Within our desire realm, in these six divisions of going from the hells to the spirits, to the animals, to humans, demigods and gods, all of us here in the desire realm suffer from the threefold division of suffering, that of physical and mental pain, the suffering of transient pleasure, and all-pervasive suffering. When we go to the form and formless realm, it's a little different. So if we look at the experience of form realm gods, so the form realm has four concentrations, four divisions. And so if we look at the experiences of form realm gods, but only those who are ordinary gods, ordinary beings, not Arya beings there, those born in the first three of the four concentrations, the lower three of the four, they don't suffer from the first of that threefold division, that of physical and mental pain, but they experience the second two types of suffering, that of transient happiness and all-pervasive suffering. So of the four divisions within of the four concentrations within the form realm, those ordinary gods, the ordinary beings who are gods on those first three concentrations, they experience the suffering of transient pleasure, in that they still have the mental factor or the consciousness of feeling, and the feeling of pleasure or the feeling of happiness. And therefore, they experience the second of the threefold division. And they also experience the third of the threefold division of suffering, that of all-pervasive suffering, because the aggregates are in the nature of suffering. The aggregates are contaminated aggregates, and therefore they suffer the third type of suffering as well.
gyuwe dunga di meware, me nyurwa, mere, jesan da kyaba duji dunga ba mere. Soso gyuwe digila gyuwe dunga da kyaba duji dunga ni yungore. Pakbe gansa dela kyaba duji dunga yore esmado da gyuwe dunga diya yungo mare, me sarwa.
And on those same first three, the lower three of the four levels of the form realm, where there are Arya beings, the gods who are Arya beings, they, not being liberated, will still suffer from the third type of suffering, all-pervasive conditioning, but they will not have the second type of suffering, that of transient pleasure.
That's something Shiba said, that's something Shiba, and that's Sumebe Gansa. Consolia Carriorasine. That dunga yomare, and Guru dunga yomare, dungani yomare, that Chabaduji dunga yorejere. That something Shibata, Sumia comes on it, Chabaduji dunga, Polmic, and Gunia, Sawa Tabiki, dungale, 마데 두베 코와 지제에게 동안 디는 빵비 탈비고 고방 진행이야 도발 자고에서 세지 지자다 something 시바다 대원 맞진 something 시바다 수미베 감소니 안에 가서 차와 두지게 동안 포미꾼의 차와답이 동안래 마데바스 마데스 마데 두베 안에 코와 지제에게 동안 남 내방비 탈비고 방 진행이야 도발 자고에서 세다 나는 디바도 오버다
Those gods who are on the fourth or the highest of the four concentrations in the form realm, as well as all those in the formless realm, they only experience the third type of suffering. They only have the third type of suffering, that of all-pervasive conditioning. They don't have the first two. And that's the text refers to here. And those on the fourth level of the formless those on the fourth level and of the formless levels must endure all-pervasive suffering, which is likened to an unruptured boil. Think about these general and specific sufferings of the various realms of samsara, and then strive in every possible way to attain nirvana, that is liberation, from them all.
That something Shibada, Sumebiki, Gansa Tigelia, that Sosoki Winada, Papa Inada, Soa Dunga, Soa Tanyum Janera, Soa Tanyum Janera, Soa Tanyum Inza, and Soa Dunga Me, the Dunga Merwa. That's Soa Deva Yomarwa, Soa Deva Mebanza, and a Gu Dunga That was a Gu Dunga Sachi, Soa Deva Jurua, Dinishkura, Dineza, Gu Dunga, Carson Soa Tanyum Janere.
The reason that the gods at these levels do not experience the second type of suffering, that of transient pleasure, is because they do not have the consciousness, that is the feeling of pleasure. They only have the feeling, the consciousness of feeling of equanimity, or the neutral feeling. That is the only feeling that they have. And this is not, being a neutral feeling, it is not a feeling of happiness. Therefore, they do not experience the suffering of transient pleasure.
Leda nyomo ungu kronzo sukam la ke de leda nyomo wa ke wa lembare ne sume la ke wa lembade leda nyomo wa ke wa lembare wa 지산 leda nyomo wa ke wa lembige da kronzo 그 풍보디 차와도 주 동아 차려요 지산디 동아에 라시리 스카스네 도 스테리에 지레
But they do suffer from the third type of suffering, that of all-pervasive suffering. And this is a suffering that is shared by all beings, all ordinary beings within samsara, all beings who are still within samsara, or bound within samsara, because they have appropriated aggregates, suffering aggregates, and that is the basis of suffering, and therefore they have this basis of suffering, the third of the threefold division of suffering.
Now, when you are kondojeyo marda, kondojeyo marda, ni duecha da, ngaja da, desuki dasin rikte yungurwa, madada. 콘르게 용거 말 매번 좀 콘솔레 디버사요 말이지 디바 니마 디버사셔 기모도 콘솔 디버사와 사요 말이지 아니 미게 와서야 요 말이지 미게 와용 말이지 콘솔레 니모 요리네 미게 와용 콘로요 말에 둥아 대팅 저기 메신 시에서와 대신에 디키시와 가리오스 디바 세데 디바 세데 사요 말 콘솔이야 제산 고니마기 디바사샤기 디비 바차 사바연 마 디바사도 사야 말 콘들리 segment
So moreover though, they do still have afflicted minds, but not anger. They don't have any anger. Anger is suppressed. It's not eradicated, it's suppressed. But they do have other afflictions such as attachments. However, they do not accumulate any non-virtue.
나디네 삼다에도 당한 저게 두 신다 당한 저게 Debe kamje, su kamje, sume kamje. Chisante ngadu kewa lense de la le da nyumo kewa lense disuma de yomare. Chisanta su na sume na debe kamde ni kewa lemba da cheda le da nyumo onge kewa le len chinche la da kaho ina da chawa duju dunga de yede bare. Chisa chawa duju dunga de yede baza da ganje le chawa duju pene sukam dang sume be gansa dikelya dunga gyure dunga yomare ina chawa duji dunga yo le da nyomo onge jigu phungpo de yo bare jisan phungpo de yo ba za rangwa yo mare jisan rangwa me ba za khozo gaje dugi ina gedi shigi yo ba na shine ga chu bi me da jiga rangwa cha go mare ba jisan rangwa yo mare jisan me ba za ko chawa duji dunga de yo de bare jisan da kamsum ga do ke ba ina dunga ye rangsin ma do dele 타야 지 민도 jisan 다 가르치고도 쓰나 dele 타고도 jisan 제 타야라 가르치고 쓰는다 코와 딜레 타는 탈바세 토부도 탈바세 토바이나 되네 둥아세아데 자와이 둥아 규리 둥아다 차바주이 둥아 규리 둥아 다 둥아세 릭스 자와기네 하민도 지산 둥아기에 그 유사본에 기네 하민도 지산 탈바데 마토나 탑민도 지산 탈바도 토부도 선배게다 탈바도 이게 삼기가와데 슈갸고 그래지 지산 근데 냐위 둥아 미 둥아 리 둥아 감고메게다 차와주이 둥아 삼당네 삼당에도 안 되네 델레데 마타네 탑미누 삼제 델레 탈비다 탈바도 토구도 삼제 루시네 탈바 토기 댕이 dum발에 삼당 오래지.
Going through all these meditations, one comes to see that wherever one is born within the three realms, within the 6 subdivisions of the desire realm, or any of the classifications within the form realm or the formless realm, as long as one takes rebirth, due to our contaminated karma accumulated due to our afflictions, we will be being born without freedom, without choice, and therefore wherever we're born, our aggregates, our physical and mental aggregates, will be in the nature of suffering. They'll be contaminated aggregates. Only place where freedom is experienced is beyond samsara. In samsara, one is always chained, one is always bound within samsara. Freedom is the breaking of those chains and the achievement of liberation, of nirvana. This is where no suffering will be experienced. And not only will no suffering be experienced, it will never be experienced again. That is freedom from suffering. So reflecting in all these ways, first one gives rise to a disenchantment with samsara, seeing that it has no essence, seeing that there's nothing to long for within samsara. And thereby, one gives rise to a strong wish to strive for liberation, for freedom.
이상 대속에 할래야 술 끼어도 다 되니께베나 근데 컨트롤요 말에 둥어요 말에 이내야 안 차와두지 둥어요 말에 제가 다 되려야 릭망고요 가신다미 파베 가사 최 냠내지가 약본 거래 가신냐 되려 안에 지게 깨서네 지게 녀마기 다 소수게 세텔려 쇠남 마사 다 개왕 아마기 sonam 사비기 제보 차사 민차제 다 개왕 아마기 sonam이 제보도 차사 민차제 다 마민바디 가르하 여러스네 개왕 아마기 미개와 제시비기 디기 제보 동아 녀야지 미야데 제보디 라디오 봐다 수감네 게디게 파베 강사 최냠네 제간데도 약보여 봐다 디 메겐데 소소기보다 가시다 가르치고스네 개왕 아마기 sonam 사시비 제보디 차상 예니 롱주고다 제보디 민고래 다 가르 민고 말스네 개왕 아마 미개와 지비기 미개의 제보 동아디게 콘슬 민고 말다다 다디 제보디 미야 하도야래 나네 개의 제보 차다 민차완자 다 미개 제보디 미야 하도야 반자 다고 세델레 개조 약고 제 sonam 사메바이나 다딘마 시조도 가와기르스네 마 나솔 마기로 걸라 나손 게드 다기 냐마기 디피 사시비 제보 차사 용과자고 지사 코 차와 두지 둥어 여봐서 코 라와 여 말에 미니 나손 게두고 그래 코 차와 두지 둥어 여봐서 풍보들 라와 메바 an nyamaki legi jebu bacha nuba de sabon de yobaza rawa meba shi gore rawa meba shi ne an ngason ma ji ne an nyawa da de ne kin dunga pa meba yongwa cha gore je jesa sumega hala kena dangar ju oda sumega hala ke de be gore nyomo ba kasore kontro ke mindu chin diba saba sa sa mindu sambeke de ne ge yorwada jeta 약원비 내가 연말 갔으네 다 파베기 좀 얘네 계제 람 냠nen제 곰 냠nen제 약고 제투나데 약고레 데 마투베 있네 야왕아마고 쓰는 찾아 미달 디비 디보디 마미마제 디 조르 마네 다 동안용화 찾아 잘 제사 방고방자 사야지 여바도 찾아 사사제 되네 제레 로지 제레 방고방자 차야데 지바 차기도 하데 어디에 차고래
For the gods born in the form realm, if they are an Arya being, then it's a good rebirth. It's a good place for them to be reborn. But for those who are not Aryas, they have been born there solely due to the power of their contaminated virtue. And that takes a lot of virtue to be reborn as a form realm god. And in that life, they consume vast stores of previously accumulated positive karma, which means when the time to die comes and they see they're approaching death, it's much more likely to be in the low realms because of their having consumed so much virtue that on their continuum, primarily, there's only non-virtue left to be experienced, and thereby the next rebirth is much more probable to be in the lower realms. Then, when they die without control, they're likely to be born in the suffering lower realms. So this too we need to be clear on this, because it's important that we abandon any notion that there is somewhere worthy of hoping to be born in samsara, or a samsaric experience to be seen as pleasurable, as desirable. This we need to abandon, including rebirth in the God realms.
Na samde benyan kam gomalya jewalenbala mazu shini tokure. Dangan zo shini matumna jewachima kam gomalya jewale yomale. Da shini topje. Ne shini topsawe jela ane garche gorasne 아주 대비 녀모디 원주와디 방고래 원주와 바좀제 디고 원시 가소래 대지랑 검접제 아주 그 대비 녀모 원주와 님보된제 원주와데 방비게 방고래 다 사본에 제가 방요 말에 자와키니게 매바수요 방고봐 대비 녀모 아주 방다들 원주와 방세다 사본에 제가 방세다 방타 리번 니용고래 당아도 람 냠는지데 다음에 봐도 다음에 또 베시로 검제 아주 대비님마 방에도 대비님마 사본에 제가 방거래 사본에 집에 양계기에 매가 쓰고래 다양직 다음에 봐또 매봐 있네 아주 신이주 톱체에 제리아 되네 아직 뇌발 파견다 데레 살이야 아니 야고 휴도 섬제 되네게 살이야 뇌발에 되네 살이야 배 기우 야고도 섬섬다 두시는 검제네 아주 대비님모 원주와데 방거래 가소래 방거래 니네 방에 님보티네 방요도 안에 가소래 가사 대비님 모습 가서 대비님 원주와 바디 아주 신의 주변도네 대비님 원주와데 님보티지 방지 니네 방지 무슨 염식해야지 도고래 니네게 톱사와 있나 대 만년바체 아니 시송와나 가와지 거스는데 니네게 삼노디 직목보여봐서 되니게 깨와치마 다 감고말이야 기르고래 제 감고말이야 가시는 수라 삼다 당벌 깨용고래 세세 다 소수기 대비 녀모 잠방제 삼된 당비기 녀모데 마방바 있나 아는 아주게 깨와치마 가와지겠네 다디 삼다 당보세 기용고래
To attain rebirth in the higher realms of form and formless realm, one requires the cultivation of calm abiding. The cultivation of calm abiding serves to suppress the afflictions of the desire realm. So the desire realm afflictions, when one has cultivated actual calm abiding, it that's the strength of the mind of calm abiding suppresses the desire realm afflictions. But here it must be clearly understood, whilst one will not experience the desire realm afflictions, they have not been at all eliminated. They haven't even been reduced. They've been suppressed. It's a wisdom directly realizing emptiness. That is what eliminates the afflictions together with their seeds, and thereby leaving nothing further to remain. The cultivation of calm abiding suppresses the desire realm afflictions, but doesn't even reduce them. And then, should one die when one has suppressed the desire realm afflictions, one is going to then be likely to be reborn in the first concentration. It's there because it's the first concentration's level of afflictions that are still to be suppressed by calm abiding. The calm abiding hasn't been developed to that level yet. And that would indicate that one is likely to be born there in one's future life. Furthermore, through the attainment of calm abiding and its resulting bliss, one may desire to attain ever more higher forms of calm abiding, stronger forms perhaps of calm abiding, greater forms of bliss, and thereby desire to move up through the various levels of the form realm, trying to attain ever greater pleasures. So this may well happen, but a key point here is that to attain rebirth in the higher realms of the form and formless realm, calm abiding must be achieved, and that calm abiding suppresses the level of afflictions that practitioner is on, but only suppresses them, does not even reduce them.
Kam gombege halike bine da dunga yobata de yagaska jungo mare jisna da su me ba se de gele su kam dele an che she ya da che nya ya yungo re da bene su kam dele ya rig mang bo yor de khashel ya che nyamne che yile khashel che nyamne yune che me de ga rig ko sa chel ma sona yagdu ra che ko jimba de mang bo yor na su me be ga sa se de gele ya ne janju semba yune dele ya kya waling yo mar che de 전유 셈바티게 가르스네 델리아 최시야요 말 전유 셈바 파과티게 아니 직 델리아 가와 피고르스는 술 피고르 가서 되베 감들래 피고르 가르스는 konzo 현준제 현리아 최시 냠린 제주 판도체서 현준제 세기 될마도 피고 말 그래서 디네서 수메베 감세야 될 수요 말다 수메바자 기신은 자고야요 말 자요 말 가르 여러서는 두시 분가서 넘버 쉐바치요 와데 쉐바 남시 넘버 쉐바나 소와 용고래 쉐바 여바자 소와열에 두시열에와 소유 풍보열 두시 풍보열 남바시 풍보열과 난 두시 미다바 인자 두시 풍보열 그래서 풍보 심마도 수기 풍보열 말에 수메 감세야 되는 수메베 가사세 수요마다 수메반자 자퇴야요 말에 계시야요 말에 그래서 파취시야당 수취년야 가요 말에 저 년마 되게 소수게 냠는 제바다 되게 연마도 사바진의 취년야당 근데 롭션시야지 바시메가 소 책도
In the formless realm is thus called because there is no form. So beings who take rebirth in the formless realm do not have 5 aggregates, but only 4. Because there is no form, they have no form aggregate. And this is the case throughout all the divisions within the formless realm. And therefore, bodhisattvas never are born in the formless realm, because there is no form there. If there's no form, there is going to be no Dharma, because Dharma means there will be Dharma teachings. Teachings, sound is form. Sound is form. So therefore, bodhisattvas who only take rebirth where there is benefit, where there's benefit to sentient beings, will not be born in the formless realm because they cannot teach or receive teachings. In the formless realm, beings who are born there only have a primary consciousness. There is no form aggregate there. Hence, bodhisattvas do not take rebirth in any of the divisions of the formless realm.
That's maybe Kansala Papi Kansa Yungura Pape. That is 저기 년대 파바다 랑제 파바 년대 파바로 제수 파바 용거와 이내 람님네 제수 안에 람님네 제가 용거를 이내다 코로나서 녀마기 람님네 제는 것도 되바다 제술야 최제 냠네지 람규레기네 이니 깨워야게 이니 깨워len디가 여러와 데서다 코로나서 이니 다 곰라 잡제 되니게 윤마도셰 잘라 최시야다 되니까 메르와다 이내 파베 강사다 되니 용거를 제를 자좀 받아 용거를 이내다 소수 지부 곰 잡제 똑바 야게다 용거래 마도 야简单的学啥我学的先来学啥我先判断主要的没的
that Arya Bodhisattvas are not born in the formless realm doesn't mean that no Arya beings are born in the formless realm. Hearers and solitary realizers may well be born there. So, for example, those which are foe destroyers will be born there. Or those which are not foe destroyers but are Arya beings will be born there, and they will progress to the level of foe destroyer through their own meditation in the formless realm. They do not then need to receive further teachings, nor do they have the wish to teach. They have the wish to attain liberation from cyclic existence. So therefore, for them to be born in a realm where they can deepen their meditation solely, and there are already Arya beings, is suitable for or desirable for Arya hearers and Arya solitary realizers. So they may well be born in the formless realm.
당한저 수리게 당 수미게 게기 네 되바게 되별하다 밀게나 당한저 게와 레다 녀모 온게 게와 렘바이네 다 게와 렘비기 띠인디 약쇼 당한저기 미 띠인디 다 약쇼를 해지래 다 약쇼 있어야 돼 가르쳐 왔으는 한저 취에 냠는 제할에 약쇼를 해지래 그래서 다 수메비기 띠인진 띠인 제바이나 다 거서 이네 취시야다 냐메 다 되네 수기 띠나 되베 띠나 다 되별하다 되네 제바이나 당한저기 되비기 미 띠인데다 취에 냠는 제할에 약쇼들에서 배주 체쇼들에서 세상 나중에 되별하다 수길하려야 취에 냠는 제 요르데 이네 가르요라서는 베네 뇌중 장슈샘 동유튜브 셔럽 냠는 제 용거래 잠니제다 파신주기 냠는 제 용거래 근데 가르 용거 말서는 나게 냠는 게림나 소름 냠는 제디 살려야 냠는 제 요말에 제사디 게림나 소름이 나 냠는 제디 가서 되비기 미 루된데라 냠는 제 요래 제베 제사다 저기 최 냠는 전에 상계 고방 퇴야려야 아니 게림나 조림기 냠는 제배나 상계 고방 퇴야 돼 타녀 뉴와 두고래 제가 되는 인상 저기 리딘 될래야 제 투요 반사 땡기디 저기 땡미 리딘데 다 저기 최 냠는 제야래 약쇼래 세제 땡 약쇼들이 해줘래
Within these three realms and all their subdivisions, the very, very best place of rebirth is in the human realm, not in any other God realms, but in the human realm. So whilst some God realms certainly are a desirable place of rebirth for those who are striving to spiritually develop, human realm is still better. And this is because in the form realms, one can train in love and compassion and develop bodhicitta and train in the six perfections. So therefore this makes a rebirth in the form realm as possibly a good rebirth, but it's still not the best rebirth. And the reason that a human rebirth is superior is because not only here can we train our minds in definite emergence, bodhicitta, and the six perfections, but we can also practice generation and completion stages of highest yoga tantra. It's only a human form, a human body, that is suited to the trainings in the generation and completion stages. And therefore, because that is the case, the human form is best for progressing towards Buddhahood, because when one has cultivated the stable basis and this stable foundation of the sutra trainings, the trainings of the generation and completion stages are the very quickest to achieve Buddhahood. Therefore, the rebirth we have is supreme.
Nabening and the Sudan, Sumiki, Ladikilia, Hornzul, Dunga Meva, and Za, the Hornzulia, the Ladikilia, and the Mission, Hornzul, Ben, Twinkin, Yavata, Sergio Wata, and Chasa, Yahor Chadurua, Chisa, Naz, Konzuchena, Naz, Midike, Jitsetung Tung, and the Ganga Mawa, Yoverua. The Neza Nejung Gieti, Lela, the Nazuki, Nejung Lela Yungore. Carson, Sosolia, Ganga Chene, Ganga Mambo Chair, Nadine Ansans, Yungu, but the Nazu Manga Yungu was a Ganga Gaze Mangayuna, Ganga di let her some of the Shusheli Gore. Ganga Shera Mehendikilia, and Ganga di Targos and Ganga, some Sheratango, Ganga, the Tarduga, some of the Gilima, the late Humara, Shuchuma, Yungoma. Just the Dineza, Nejunga, some Gomea, Gomba in there. That Hadang, as you meet in the Chaban, as you did the Mission Lela, Carson as meet Setunga, to Setung, and then as a Mambo Yaki, Lela, Yobasa, Ganga Mambo Tedu, Ganga de la Targos and somebody, Gedi Lela Yungore. It's not a Mission Giada. Is that's social ya Dunga Targu, somebody, Lela Gigubana, this some of the Shana part Yobana, Mishandal, some Taban. Jamniji the Lela, she's an answer me, Ludin Delia, Nijun Giata, Gombaina, where she lay Ludin Chabena, Nijun Gia Lawa, Jamniji Gombaina, Deletin de la Gile Lawa. Da, and then Danyawa the Dundroda, Naso deleted the gate to a hormare, and Yamnaji to a mere, the Kalehawurwa, that didn't send delation the Sharai Lela, she's an answer me, Ludin di, Lam Yamlan Chiala, Nijun Gomia. Janchu Sem Yamlen Jia, and Dinaje, or Jet Yamlen Chevaina, Chaza, that Yamnechia, Kia, La, Dina Maje, and Jig Jamnija Maje Kirim now, Zorim Yamnechevena, Chetu, Chesanga, Lumi, Ludendi, Danjuki, Milimboche, said on the Zachimushure, said the Chesa Leda, Numo on the Koi Lembigi, Koi Dunga, Chava, do you do a red, the Beje now and Beje, Yabot now to a Beje Chimbo. Down to a Pumpo Chadir. Chizang Pumpo Dunga Raji, Chava Duji Dunga, Leda, Numo Jungari. Inaya, Delia, Bejetan by Nanga, Bejetin, Delia, Bejetan, Anzuki, Nejung, Jansem, Yantepa Tawa, Chaza, Gerim Zorim, Tuptuyagi, and that the Sanyo Tarbata, Tamje Kembe, go on, Toptuyagi, Den Chabats in the Chadir. Chiza, Anzuki, that Dinky Nane, Kamganani, Yawalimbe, Ludin, the Mill Ludin, the Yashur, yes, or that.
Here further reflection is required, because whilst it certainly is true that it's a human form that's required to engage in the tantric practices of the generation and completion stages, one may think, well, if I'm as a god, there with such good conditions, I can train in the Buddha Dharma well, because we know they are god realms where one can train in the Buddha Dharma. And whilst that is the case, and as we've just heard, one can develop love and compassion and the six perfections in the God realms, and it's only Tantra that one can't practice there, one may think, well, let me get that basis right in a situation that's much more comfortable than what I have now. That too is a mistaken way to think. And this is because the God realms are so comfortable that very comfort, that very pleasure serves as a great impediment to the development of the minds of Dharma. This is because they have fantastically comfortable material conditions, long lifespans, and very few problems at all compared to us humans. And therefore, their mind is overwhelmed by pleasure. Whereas for us as humans, we know this is not our experience. When we look with honesty, we see that actually the suffering that we experience, whilst deeply unpleasant, has some great purpose, in that it's through suffering that our mind turns towards the Dharma. It's through our own experiences of suffering that we have an impetus to reflect on the sufferings of samsara. It's through our own suffering that we have an impetus to give rise to a wish for freedom from samsara in entirety, and thereby give rise to definite emergence. That is very difficult in the God realms. That is extremely difficult to give rise to in the God realms. And without definite emergence being generated, the subsequent realizations of love, compassion, and bodhicitta cannot come. So therefore, as a human being, where our lifespan is not only so much shorter than that of a god, and thereby can lead to a sense of urgency through good reflection, but our lifespan is not certain, the length of our life is not certain, and moreover there are many causes that can lead, or many conditions that can lead to a sudden and abrupt ending of our lifespan, such as disease, pandemics. And this too aids the cultivation of definite emergence. And definite emergence is a prerequisite to the generation of great love and great compassion and bodhicitta. So therefore, in order to enter a path, human rebirth is supreme. And it's for this reason that the human rebirth is called precious. And our human rebirth is precious because of the great meaning, the great purpose that is attainable for us. This is very difficult to achieve as a god. It's near impossible to achieve in the lower realms because of the intensity of pain and lack of intelligence. But what we have here as humans is the very, very best of circumstances.
톱되어버려 제가 땐델이야 저기 냠내체나 냠내제 땐 초도 교버지 인자다 또 삼다제다 저기 냐와 이다 둘러스게버네 동아 빠도며 예버레스 다 디마제 가서 밀게베네야 다 동아에 동아 유 동아 차와듯이 동아세다 동아다 말아다가도 또 삼다네 다마다 두 제자 동아딘데 제샤스 다 할게베네 라마인세디게 동아딘에도 데빌 할게나 동아딘에 용도 제자다 야캄 고미게 할게베나 동아딘에 다 강제 가와 깨베네 차와 뒤지게 동아세야 될 타야기네 민도 제자다 동아의 라신제 차상배 약보르샤다 이모야게 다 댕케야 되가 민도 제자 디네자다 나우줄레 델리아 타로 데니게 타로 타네 가려운 거라서는 타르바세 토바 이나 다 데니게 다 동아디게 싸워있네요 아요 말이죠 제자다 대화 띵이 대화 제샤 제자 타바세 토부도 제자다 타바 토야라 가르쳐 버려서는 타바 토야기 된다라 타바 토구도 선비게 삼바 돈예디다 동아 유코르 동아디게 삼다지 타바세 토구도 선비게다 그디이나 삼나디 내가 저기 숙체 따야 돼 데네 삼다데 타바 돈예 삼바세야지 장해야 되디 먼저 고미야 돼 디레다 나디니게 곰제네 나가 저기 타바 토야기 된다라야 난 라는 냠는 제야디 가르쳐 버렸으나 꿈론 데니기 케제다 타바 토야도나 가르쳐 버렸으나 당아 저기 녀모바디 숙sun 땅고라 빠야 돼 가서 녀모 빠야 돼 다 타바 토야기 된다라 매버서야 돼 녀모 매버서야 돼 진짜 녀모바 매버서야 돼야 녀모바 내가 매버서야 지당 다 사보나 제바 매버서야 돼 림바 서부터 이용고로와 진짜 가서 녀모바 내가 게 맞추와체 살도 게 맞추와체 가야 되라 룽아 이숨게 되면 예주 되면 추름 써야 되다 예바서 싸우기는 지금 매선비게다 예주 되면 추름 써야지 제가 단 생기 수제바네다 소술이야 예주 되는 지금 매선비게다 저기 쇠복음이야 되려 제가 되네기자 예주 되면 추름 써야다 쇠복음이야지도 아주 룽아 녀모바 살도 끼야 돼 바가야다 되네 단예마게 사시비게다 녀모베 사시비 바차지어바 디버여바이나 대송한주게 당시 계절체지 니 못없이 삼다제 다 샤dom제 두스제는 저기 제야 돼. 나다 녀모봉원에 사본나 제바 매바 쇠알 양아주 같이 걸었으네. 다음에 비키신 주반에 신가서 다음에 봐 삼다. 다음에 제바체. 다음에부터 따와디. 또야게도 날 제바체. 근데 뒤도바이나 델이야 당아서 띵이지 신의 죽제. 네 신의 죽 신의 곰. 두스제네 냠나제도 당원도 두스제 제도 되네. 저기 삼로 탈바세 토부도 선배 삼로디 되네 슈셔셔러제 되네 Gidi Yine, and the Jini say, or the Tabat Matum, the Jimidu, some of the Rangshingi, Hanga, Shushuki, but the Jema may be killed. Then I ask you, Lam said, Gigo, Lam Gigores. That didn't give in, and then the Yaya Drama to do Joy in Yomar. That didn't Yaman, the Shusha, she's not the name to get Tabatoya, the Tablam the two species tango, yes, she's not to give. Ye dunga, he dunga, me dunga, shed, Shazan said, she acquired comes a career. So Tarba said, Togudu, Sempe, some of the Shukshire drag Dondala Shigore. Then Tarba the getting Togudu, Sempe, Donia Samba Shukchimu, and Gigan, this would Dunga de San Madana de Gore. Dunga San Madana, then Tarba said, Togudu, Sempe, some of the Gedi, Nazanga, Shuki to win, Kanye Dunga down, me Dunga down, Snake Gasoli, Dunga, some Dango, Marco. That is some show, I think, Anzugula, Bene Gigo, Marquia, Donation, Ben Milia, Chike. Shenamin Atisha Tangbone Dil Mado, Shena Mugur, what is Shena, Jigger doesn't, the Mado Dondala Chigora. They see Dugmena, Shena Yomar, Pen Tamatang, Tag, Dovashibu, Dunir Dumba, Chigina, or Tamatanga, Loa, Nigger, Jigger says, call Shena, they call Tamatang, Dunir Dumba the Par loss, and that thing may some Gigoro. Then you need Tama, you need. Martin can Tawan, Junior, making there in or Tamatin, the juniors, and call here was Gayoma, was Carson Dele Tamate, doing you Dubayoma, Dinageria. Now, so that Deba, the Chapel, Chapa, the Duhin, the Chapel, Chapa, Shuchiboyorwa. Just not he, Delia, call the Chapa, Chapa, you was a Dele Chapa, the Doye Dondala, doing Doye Dondala, Delegi, and Azuki, Gundi, Shigorwa, the Dondadiri. To do some dancing, some died and Yamlin Jedi, and do some tongue with the kitchen, which I would what around Ranshan Samang around and around Chasanda, that didn't say Chibare.
This year we've looked at a number of crucial topics. Now we've come to having looked at the sufferings experienced by all those born in ordinary beings born in the higher realms. And this is an incredibly important topic to reflect on. First, that the topic of what is meant by cyclic existence. What do people and what do beings and why do beings experience what they do in cyclic existence? We start with the sufferings of the lower realms, which we looked at back in February, in the first 2 classes or so of February. And then we turn to our own experiences here as humans, our direct experiences and what we've observed. And we look at this through meditating on the threefold division of suffering as well as the eightfold division of suffering. And then we also look at what beings, other unseen beings, those of the demigods and desire realm gods, as well as the form and formless realm gods, what they experience. We do so repeatedly over a sustained period, coming to see that nowhere in cyclic existence is there an experience that is not contaminated. There is nothing that is, there's no experience of freedom to be found within cyclic existence. There's no experience that is freed of suffering at some level within cyclic existence. This we need to reflect on repeatedly, first coming to a sense of disenchantment with cyclic existence, and thereafter coming to develop ever more strongly the wish to be freed from cyclic existence, to break these chains that keep us bound here, to overcome this delusion that makes us think that the suffering realm is actually pleasurable. The more we reflect on this, the more clearly this will arise to us, the more transformative our understanding will be. And to the extent that we reflect on this, to that extent we will start to lose desire for cyclic existence. And we'll start to give rise to a longing for actual freedom. And this will then turn us to, how do we achieve freedom? We recognize that it's our afflicted minds that keep us bound here, so it's these that we have to eliminate. And then we turn in our meditation to how to do so. And here then there are two approaches to take. How to temporarily overcome our afflictions and how to completely eradicate the afflictions. To temporarily overcome the afflictions, we need to cultivate primarily ethical restraint, restraining our mind so that it doesn't come under the influence of the afflictions, and thereby our body and speech too is refrained. Here we use mindfulness and introspection to ensure that the afflictions do not dominate us. And this is how we practice ethics. And this is the crucial prerequisite to the other great training to temporarily free us from the afflictions, and that of patience. Ethics is the prerequisite for patience. So these are the two practices that are required. Then in conjunction with this, because this is what prevent these two, ethics in particular as well as patience, prevent the accumulation of new non-virtue. To eradicate previously accumulated non-virtue, we also have to regularly engage in purification through the application of the four opponent powers. This is crucial. Then, how to completely eradicate the afflictions, not just temporarily, but completely. In other words, their seeds, how to get rid of their seeds. This can only be done through the cultivation of the wisdom realizing emptiness, which is cultivated together with calm abiding and penetrative insight. So this is crucial. It's the wisdom realizing emptiness that is it's emptiness that is realized by a union of calm abiding and meditative insight that has the strength to eradicate the afflictions and the seeds. But to be able to do that, we first need ethics and patience. That is the foundation upon which calm abiding can be achieved, upon which we can have the power of mind to actually realize emptiness. And it's through meditating through these steps on the suffering experiences of samsara, then on ethical restraint and patience, as well as the four opponent powers, calm abiding and wisdom realizing emptiness. It's through all these meditations together that we'll start to give rise to the ever stronger wish to be freed of suffering. And when this wish is uncontrived, it spontaneously arrives and remains, that is when we have a path in our continuum, the mental path of definite emergence. So this is our plan. This is the plan that we have to enact. This is the method to attain freedom. And to the extent that we can give rise to definite emergence, to that extent, we won't engage in non-virtue, because we will not want to suffer. We will have understood that non-virtue leads us to suffering. Being ethical will be easy. Being patient will be easy. Moreover, to the extent that our wish to definitely emerge from samsara arises, we will not be distracted by mundane pleasures, mundane problems, and because our mind is focused on this goal of liberation. So this is something that in the world people know in other contexts. This method of training the mind is known in other contexts. Those who smoke, I'm sure all of them recognize that smoking is bad for their health, but they continue to smoke. There'll be those who have the wish to stop smoking, but they continue to smoke. There are those who have a stronger wish to stop smoking, but they struggle to do so. They continue to smoke. And what is between these various stages is a varying development of wisdom to counteract the attachment that leads one to smoke. The wisdom also that overcomes the ignorance that thinks that smoking brings happiness. So this is very similar to what we need to do. The approach that someone who wants to abandon a strong habit, the approach they need to take is to develop wisdom. It's wisdom that will lead them to overcome the attachment and the confusion that keeps them bound in this particular suffering. And the same with us. And this wisdom comes through meditation based on knowledge, looking at suffering throughout samsara, this is using our wisdom. So too with other steps relating to ethics, patience for opponent powers or purification, calm abiding, and reflecting on emptiness. This is our path that we all need to cultivate. And if we do so in a committed way, repeatedly over a sustained period, transformation will come. This is how I train, and it's my sincerest hope that all of you train in this way. And if you do in a committed way, I can assure you, transformation will come. And that transformation then serves to bring great joy to our practice, and ensures that we put ever more energy and time into our practice, and we do so with ease because we now are experiencing that transformation. So it's my hope that you join me in these meditations. So thank you. We'll conclude here for this week. Next week we'll continue and we'll look at further ways to enhance the training of definite emergence, and we'll look there at the 3 higher trainings. So thank you very much.